Hello and welcome. You're listening to the audio presentation of She Came From Nowhere, the novelization of a 13-book series. It is the story of a secret agent from a multiversal government agency discovering the location of God and taking action to kill her. The series covers the war between gods and mortals who create and destroy themselves and their worlds. The novels are written and performed by Caleb Morazi. If you would like to support the creation of this series and add input of your own, swing by patreon.com/shecamefromnowhere to become a secret agent. You'll get access to the entire novel, new series chapters as they become available, and audio from each. Link in the description. And now, enjoy Chapter 5, Microcosms. 1. Sarah Kay addresses the timeline maintenance team she's assembled from across the multiverse. We have located him, but I can't assure any of you will come back alive. Certain watches the scaly-skinned, half-men lumbering below his cave hideout. He looks at the Zeppelin cities in the sky holding the people responsible for these monstrosities. He wants nothing more than to fly up there and bring them crashing down into the hell they've created. It would be just, he thought. It would be fair, but without his wings, it was totally outside of his capability. He was stuck trying to survive among these dim-witted beasts for who knows how long. Sure, it was tough, but they were handcrafted killing machines, familiar with the layout of the land and thirsty for blood. That's when he realized that since the Daylong were in the sky and no longer interested in their creation, that he could rule this planet like a god. The PDs were powerful but dumb, and dumb creatures were always looking for someone to lead them in their fight against a power they couldn't understand. Many of them would die, but that was the risk that Certain was willing to take. Besides, to him, they were just like the Menasker on his homeworld, so he would be glad to take some of his pent-up aggression out on them. He didn't care if the Daylong were overthrown. He needed an army to face the Bureau. At the CIB headquarters, the Typhon slithers into a transversal with Irian soldiers. "Sorry for the damage I did to your suits," he says gruffly. "Lost my head there for a sec." 2. Gertie drags the winged creature's body into the temple morgue. "I don't know why you're keeping them," she says to the goddess Sparrow. "They're better off dead." She trips, dropping Sequi's head on the flagstone. "Careful," the melodious voice roars in the shadows. "Keep them intact. They're easier to stitch back together that way." "Sorry, Your Excellence," Gertie says, picking the creature up. "I'll do better." "You'd better," the winged lion says, stalking into the light, circling the woman and the bodies. "Or you'll end up just like them, and you wouldn't want that, do you?" The policewoman looks down, her robot and human parts aching where they join. "Unlike you, these are interesting specimens," Sparrow says, rolling Sakan over with her paw. "Very sturdy built, capable of withstanding the technology I've developed." Sakan's wounds glow as the griffin pours nanobites into them, healing the illic. She sits up. "You couldn't let me rest in peace, huh? I was helping your friend survive." Faster than they could blink, Sakan snatches Gertie and has a claw to her throat, standing unsteadily on her feet. "We're going to leave here," she says to the griffin as they move to the door. "Stop me, and she and everyone in this town are dead." Sparrow laughs. "Your threats don't scare me. Try and leave. See how far you'll get." The illic drags Gertie out of the temple morgue. "How do we get out of this town?" "There's no escape," she says sadly. "We think we'd stay here if we didn't have to?" What she put in me shows me her weakness. With Gertie under one arm, Sakan scoops up a broken signpost and flies straight up at the membrane over New Trenton. The pole pierces the membrane, keeping them from the outside world, but they bounce off of it, spiraling to the ground. Gertie screams as they fall. "I'm telling you, there's no way out. Sparrow only made you think there was to break your will." Sakan smashes into the ground, cracking the cobblestones as she drops the policewoman. The illic groans, her golden blood gushing out from all the places she's become broken again. Gertie gets to her feet, slipping and catching herself on the nearby lamppost. "You'll get used to it after a while," she gasps. "She has a purpose for us all." She hooks her hands under Sakan's arms, dragging her back toward the temple morgue. "The friend you came with wasn't nearly as strong as you are." His body immediately rejected Sparrow's cure. "You should count yourself lucky to be alive at all." 3. "We've tracked Griffin into a Parotia Grove on Ahriman," Sarah Kay says to the League of Vajrapani. "It's technically off limits, but I want you to go and extract him." "Are you putting agents in danger for someone you love?" Gashala Manju asks. Sarah Kay should have known she couldn't hide her feelings from a man whose superpower was uncovering secrets. I do love him. We've just never been able to make it work. He's also a valuable member of our team, and we need to know what he knows. We need to move him, the Perotia whispers to the Holly, unwrapping their bark from the sleeping wolf. If they stop him from going to the Dreamer and removing him from existence, the agents they're sending will follow their orders and destroy it. All of our realities will unravel if she goes. We won't get to live together as the beautiful trees we are. Instead, we'll be animals or something. They all shudder at the thought. Let's just eat him then, the cypress hisses, creeping. If there's nothing left to find, there's nothing left for them to erase. Their creaky laughter carries on the breeze. Sap begins to ooze from the holly as it salivates. Yes, share him with us, it whispers. All the humans here have become too quick for us, and we haven't had a bite in ages. I don't have the heart, the Perotia says, dropping him. Seeing what he's seen. A transverser pops in from nowhere, landing near the trees, and Vira, a muscular woman with blue skin and red hair, steps out swinging. I want you to give me that wolf, Keherahan, or I'll tear you out by your roots and use you as toothpicks. Avalok, a man with brown skin and glasses, hurries behind her, dragging Griffin to the transverser. You found me, the wolf sighs, half conscious. I thought I'd escaped. We got you, the League member says, and we'll get you home safe and sound. 4. CAK_BRD sits on his makeshift throne, and No1L_KAN unit by his side, and a group of refugees huddled together on the warehouse floor. Just like on Chiron, he says. A storm rages outside, the lightning revealing the silhouette of Miss Tick, the Spider-Woman, as she crawls up the outer wall to the roof. She's been stalking us for weeks, sir, the No1LKAN says to CAK_BRD via the ad hoc mind link. Her chemical signatures indicate that she's well fed, which means she's here after something more. You, CAK_BRD points at 5A_Kanal with a smirk. Go see what she wants. Ever gets up with her as she heads toward the stairs. Hold up, he says to CAK_BRD. We don't know what that thing is, and it's raining outside. At least get her a raincoat. Fine, but you go with her, says the Emperor, and don't come back until it's dead. I'm not a mindless drone, CAK ever says. I'm going because I'm sick of you. They put on raincoats from the pile of odds and ends they've scavenged from the city before heading up to the roof. I don't know how he does it, he says to 5A_Kanal. I don't want to help him, but I find myself doing what he's decided he needs done. They step into the rain and he grabs her, leaping out of the way as Miss Tick lunges. Like this? I definitely don't want to be here with whatever this is. I know you don't either, and you wouldn't be here if he hadn't hacked your brain. I don't think he even cared that it was you coming here. I think he knew I wasn't going to let you go alone. 5A_Kanal's eyes are vacant, her words hollow. CAK_BRD is in charge now. We live to serve him. The mind-link human accepts her fate as Miss Tick grabs her. A scream cuts to the night, distracting the Spider-Woman from sinking her fangs into 5A_Kanal, and a winged creature drops out of the storm like a lightning bolt, separating Miss Tick from her prey. Let's make this quick. I have to get back to Illic. The web around 5A_Kanal's feet trips her up, her face smashing to the ground. Ever rushes to her as the unknown Illic tears into Miss Tick with his claws. Wake up, the man says, shaking the mind-link human. Please. But 5A_Kanal is out, the rain pouring off the two of them and diluting the blood running from the gash in her forehead. BAT_B01, DUK_LPS, DUK_LP5, and WE_ZEL, members of CAK_BRD's ad hoc mindlink, burst onto the roof, dodging Miss Tick as they move to assist Ever. The No1L_KAN says she will be okay if we can get her back to him for repairs. W3_Z3L says, if any one of us took a fall like that, we would have busted circuits, but with her it's superficial. They carry 5A_Kanal to the door, but Miss Tick blocks their way. Not so fast, she hisses, before the Illic leaps onto her back, pulling back her head to bite her jugular vein. Blood sprays everywhere, the Spider-Woman dropping to the roof with a splash. Ever wakes 5A_Kanal up as he grabs her hand, trying to take her from them. I want you to go, she says. It's not home, but CAK_BRD will take care of me. But that's just it, he says, holding onto her tighter as the members of the mind link struggle to take her. He won't. He doesn't care about you, any of you. You're just expendable assets to him. He'll use you as replacement parts or cannon fodder as he sees fit. Right now, you're only supporting him because he's exploiting your programming. 5A_K0N puts her hand on his arm. I wish I could understand your need for self-governing. It seems to bring you comfort, but don't fight for me ever. It doesn't matter who's in charge. Serving as part of an interconnected organism is where I'm happy. Ever lets her go, and the MindLink members carry her to the door. You're better than this. You wouldn't have access to the null1L_KN units if it weren't for you. They leave Ever alone with the Illic. She's better than that, he says to the winged creature. I don't know why she can't see through his shallow, meaningless life. Not everyone is ready for greatness, the creature says. Some are made to follow. Did you come here for me? Ever asks the Illic, and the creature nods. We both did, actually, he says, nudging the Spider-Woman with his foot. Well, incidentally, I suppose. She didn't know she was looking for you until she arrived here. I, on the other hand, wanted to find you since I felt you'd collapse your entire timeline. You felt that, huh? Wasn't on purpose. I just didn't like how things were turning out. It wasn't for you, Trenton says. Your purpose is greater. Stopping my brother. 5. Why I was at the Phoenix Club is unimportant, Professor Flockhart's voice filling Sarah Kay's office. My actions are beyond your understanding. What's important is I saw a human version of the creature enter a hell dimension, and we need to get her out. The CIB's acting director knew better than to pry into the affairs of the immortal Yaman. He'd been with the organization since the beginning, helping to shape its philosophies and oversee its operations on foreign worlds. Although no evidence was ever found, those who opposed him disappeared, never to be heard of again. She could also see he had a point. Taking care of a close iteration of the creature would give them an in with it and hopefully help them discuss the peace treaty Sarah Kay desperately wanted. Being opposed by the source of all things would be disastrous. We don't have influence on those worlds, she says, buttoning her jacket as she stands, and little intel. People rarely go in, and I've never heard of anyone coming out. I may be able to help in that department, Flockhart rasps. I have a contact there. He felt bad about his betrayal. Dr. Cleve was a really good kid. She wanted peace in the multiverse and didn't abuse her power. But she was just a cog in the machine. The central government was going to use her niceness and naivety for their own ends before disposing of her. He knew they would, because he created the protocol for it. Flockhart laid out as much of the plan as he could, making another plan in the back of his mind as to how he was going to save her from the fate he had inadvertently set her up for. The whole government was going to fall. He had to make sure of that, but there were good people he had met along the way who he wouldn't allow to get hurt. Dr. Ryan, come to my office, Sarah Kay says into her watch. Get Marilyn and the squirrel, too. She smooths down the skirt she paid too much for, addressing Flockhart. We're running this, Professor. I need to know everything. Stop holding out on me. The ancient man smiles. You're a lot more clever than I have given you credit for. You taught us at the academy that it was the little things that end up having the biggest impact on a situation. I was listening then, and I'm listening now. While most hell worlds are self-contained, afraid to reach into the multiverse for fear of losing control of their citizens, yet Sirah is looking to expand in the hopes of turning every world into a prison like their own. While your mission is to retrieve the human counterpart, I need to get someone in there so I can eliminate their leader. Sarah Kay knew the importance of hell dimensions, serving the same purpose as a forest fire. Destruction that ended with new life and new growth. It was necessary to burn off the life energies that proliferated the multiverse, but she still needed to stop it. 6. Terrence Gottlieb and Pamela Gray Straker climb into a transverser headed for Cube 2. I don't want to be your friend, she says. We don't need to complicate things. They land in the microcosm after a few leaps. Here, put this on, she says, handing him a metal eyepiece. This world's inhabitants have reestablished their network, and we don't need to be recruited. It sends out a false signal saying we're connected to them. Don't need it, Terrence says. If anything comes up, I'll manipulate their mind. It's protocol. Observe and don't draw attention, Pamela says, but Terrence shrugs. There's a knock on the transverser, and Pamela opens the door, finding an older woman leading a brigade. Come now, the MindLink woman says. No time for exploration. We've run out of resources here, so CAK_BRD says it's time to move. Pamela nods, stepping out with Terrence right behind her. Where are we going? Through the maze, the woman says. Didn't you get the directive? We're off to conquer the closest resource-rich world we find. Are your eyepieces working? The two agents look at each other with concern. Yeah, of course they are, Pamela says. We just want to know if you had any idea of where we're specifically going. CAK_BRD will let us know when we arrive, the woman replies. Fall in line. The woman does an about face, the men and women behind her, matching her movements as she walks toward the edge of town. Terrence and Pamela on their trail. Are you going to reconsider whether we're friends or not? Terrence whispers to his fellow agent. Looks like we may be on this mission for longer than we anticipated. 7. I want to leave, Tetraserini says to the Empress finally. I can't take it anymore. Prue, too, smiles harmlessly, but her eyes say otherwise. Go ahead. It's taken a year for certain to win over a tribe of PDs by killing their chief in hand-to-hand combat and then fighting every warrior who opposed him after that. They weren't the brightest species, but they were strong, their scaly hides tough, and they had sharp teeth in their elongated snouts. He had suffered more than a few casualties, but the scars were trophies that he wore with honor among them. As their chief, he made them mine the elements he needed to build a cannon. Not easy work with such limited resources and intelligence, but he got it done. His people had a knack for languages, and he began to tell them stories about how he was going to bring down their gods from the sky. Certain knew Sarah Kay wasn't taking any easy chances. His warriors were ready when the transversor arrived, the Aryan troops swarming their village with the Typhon in tow. Sebastian knew something was wrong, but he couldn't put his paws on it. Ever since he had come back with his field assignment, things felt different. He couldn't explain it. He'd passed the test and was being sent after a new recruit, but everything felt weird. Nothing's stopping you from leaving, Prutu says, except for your willpower. She claps her hand, making the dukes Namdol, Kelsang, Lobsang, and Kunchin appear. They circle the dingo, psychically coordinating their approach and taunting him with mental whispers. Visions of his failures and losses flit through his head as he feels his strength being sapped and he struggles to bring the energy back into his body. Terrence and Pamela march with 5A_K0N's battalion until they meet CAK_BRD's Legion outside the Great Maze. Not my plan, but we'll make it work, Pamela says. Ever follows the elect down a long door-lined hallway. I want you to know that what I did to my world was accidental, the human says. I don't know if I could repeat it. You did what you felt was necessary, the creature replies. You'll have to feel that again. Pamela watches the light in 5A_K0N's eyes fade as she melts into the crowd, letting CAK_BRD take control. We claim every world in the name of cake, he shouts. The Aryan's metal fists tear through certain PDs, but despite their technological disadvantage, the natives slaughter the agents, not wanting to surrender their chief. As the honor boards the transversor, he can't help but feel a sense of superiority to the other students he's left behind. He was now a bona fide agent while they still had a year of study. His goal was to bring order where there was none, and this was the beginning. I know you, 5A_K0N says to Pamela, coming out of her stupor. You're Griffin. No, she says, giving Terrence a signal to stand down. PAM_3LA from Kreskia. New life comes to the mind-linked human's eyes. No, I made you. Both of you, she says, looking at Terrence. I made you come, wake me from my dream, and give me the opportunity to see my dreams with my own eyes. You did it. It's marvelous to behold. They look at her, thinking that the Great Maze has somehow scrambled her circuitry, but Pamela's reading of 5A_K0N's nonverbal signals says that she's clear-minded. It doesn't last long, however, when CAK_BRD sees a small group of brown-skinned humans with goggles bolted onto their heads, and he yells, I want their world. The Legion's heads snap toward them, and they charge, sweeping the agents along with them. The Emperor hurls people at the goggled ones, and the newcomers drop clockwork eggs on the ground that sprout legs and gun turrets, mowing down the first row of attackers. CAK_BRD doesn't flinch, and his people subdue the olive-skinned people. After the attacks, 5A_K0N returns to her senses, looking at Pamela with utter sadness in her eyes. I had to see this, she says. I had to see what death was like. This. See, this is not what I intended. I let each creature choose for themselves so they could create and explore and love, but they use it to destroy and hate. You see, I saw it from far away, but I didn't fully experience it. I didn't experience the pain of it, the feeling of hopelessness. We're not, Pamela begins, but 5A_K0N stops her by putting a finger on her lips. I know you're not. But you are. You just can't see it. And that's why it hurts you. In the CIB briefing room, Sebastian paces. "What is taking so long?" he complains to Kaplan, the Snoozebarian scientist. "We've been waiting for more than a day." The alien smiles. "Why are you mad? We're not the only thing happening." Around the campfire, certain wove an epic tale to the PDs about how the gods above were angry and trying to destroy them. It ended with the tribe yelling at the sky. "This isn't what I wanted," 5A underscore Canal N says to the agents. CAK underscore BRD mind linking the goggle wearers to locate their world. "We're supposed to work together voluntarily." "Follow my lead," Trenton says to Ever, approaching a group of long-legged birds people in techno-magic. He speaks in their honking, moaning language before they bow to one another. "I wish I had their ease. Everyone on my world is always suspicious." "I guess a race doesn't develop razor claws and teeth just so they can be nice to each other," Ever says. "I'm guessing you killed off all the other species on your planet?" "We were almost killed off," Trenton replies. "If it weren't for my daughters dreaming up a way for us to live in the clouds, we would have been wiped out." "She was so young then, I have no clue where she came up with such an idea. It's like she was taken over by something so much wiser than herself, and then the mountains were raised." Viola gets lost in the memory. "She always seemed to be guided by a magnificent inner voice." Sebastian gets up. "It's been almost a week. I'm bored. I want to sleep in my own bed. I literally want to be anywhere else. If this is what working for the CIB is like, I'm done. They can count me out of the whole running the multiverse thing." The otter heads to the door, and Sarah Kay enters looking stressed. "Oh good, you were able to make it," she says, collapsing into a chair. "Have a seat. I'll make this brief." The roar from the PD's cannon split the night, lighting up the sky and terrifying the inhabitants in every direction. Certain knew this day would go down in the history of this world, and he wanted to make sure it was remembered. The handcrafted projectile soared far better than he anticipated, even with his careful planning, striking the Zeppelin city above and creating another explosion that could probably be seen from even further away than the first. He justified his actions in his mind by telling himself that his tribe had sacrificed themselves for him, so he was going to make sure they were free. The gods above were responsible for making the PDs like this, and they would pay. CAK underscore BRD sent 5A underscore K0N to scout Trephinate with the goggle-wearing natives with orders to report back because, in his words, people trust you, and we can use that. 8. As per her orders, Pamela and Terrence remain observers as 5A underscore K0N mind links the natives. "We're still not friends," Pamela says, "but I'm glad I'm not here alone." Starting with the science lab they arrived in, they assist 5A underscore K0N in using CAK underscore BRD's Cubians to infiltrate Trephinate, the network growing. It gave them the freedom to move through the cities, subtly bringing awareness to this new world that things were amiss at the research facility and people living there may not be what they seem. It was first dismissed as paranoia, but they kept at it until the Trephians took action. Once she sensed she'd been found out, 5A underscore K0N pushed her network into overdrive, forcibly overriding implanted hardware to link them together. She told Pamela in confidence, "We want it in place before CAK underscore BRD arrives, or he'll hurt them." When the Emperor arrived, the entire continent was under their control. 5A underscore K0N met him at the laboratory with an entourage who all bowed low before him. "Well done," CAK underscore BRD said, reaching across the network to admire her work. "It's ours." Terrence and Pamela got themselves assigned to a mission abroad, spreading the network around the world. Off the grid, they raised the support they needed to create a resistance to the mind link, demonstrating its awesomeness and terrifying power. The rebellion started with them, but they couldn't be around to lead it or even officially participate because of their directives, so they terminated their signals, killing themselves. The desert was treacherous, but it held the closest portal leading them home. Pamela's biocircuits corroded, and she died in Terrence's arms, saying, "You're a good one." 9. Sarah Kay stands beside the unconscious Griffin, the CIB medical team, attempting to get the ferocious toxins out of him. "I know we want to keep the Hell Worlds around for balance," she says to him, "but certain is causing the destruction to spread rapidly." Dropping the Zeppelin had a huge impact on Certain's reputation. The remaining PD tribes fell in line as the story spread, becoming legends. Those who opposed him were deposed by their own people, stronger warriors taking their place. It didn't stop there. The surrounding nations of Karlavans and Ski-Lakans heard too and came to his aid. "You of all people know how sensitive the multiverse is," Sarah Kay says, putting her hand on Griffin's. "You're the reason I passed Cleodynamics. This disruption is causing all of his other iterations to act up too. I'm putting out fires on dozens of worlds. The acting director squeezes her friend's hand, taking a deep breath, adjusting her suit. There is hope, though. We're tracking leads and have almost located the Imogen. Flockhart used to say, no matter the disruption, you can always find equilibrium. Ellen stood by him. When he was nothing, and the two of them were shivering in a cave, and even more so now as they were traveling from country to country to prepare and train the troops for war. Yet he knew that she knew his weakness. No matter how loyal she seemed, he knew it was only a matter of time before she betrayed him. That was the way of things. Even his brother had turned against him when he felt that he was a lost cause. The multiverse was full of spiteful creatures looking for an opportunity to take their own frustrations and anger out on him. There was no one that you could trust, no one that you could rely on except yourself, and that he had always kept him safe. The CIB's acting director always felt overdressed when she briefed the Hutzilian warriors in the traditional loincloths. As agents, they had a hard time blending in the cities, but they were imperceptible in nature. She wanted that skill for them now. She wished she could hide her emotions like they could behind their stoic, tattooed faces. It made them intimidating because she couldn't tell if she was getting through to them. He won't stop with one world. You need to get him before he takes more. Once the Delong knew what was happening, it was too late. Even with their superior technology, they underestimated what was happening on the ground. After the initial assault, Certain watched the skies, planning, wanting them to be lulled into a false sense of security before executing a coordinated attack that brought all of them to their knees. At the Academy, he had learned of worlds that existed simply to destroy life so that their quantum counterparts in the multiverse could become more powerful. He decided that he was going to become that force, and he could feel their deaths, making him stronger. 10. It was too easy, CAK_BRD thought to himself, probing the planet of networked minds. His last successful world domination had taken so much more bloodshed. Griffin feels the nanobots crawling under his skin, rebuilding the tissue dissolved by the Perotia. He struggles to get out of bed, but the holographic medical staff materialize to restrain him. He tries to resist, but they turn up the sedation. Before blacking out, he resolves to find her. He wasn't going to let her believe that she was alone in the universe. In the dark cell of Yet Saral, Connie lost her sense of time. Had she been there a day, a month, her whole life? She didn't know. The only thing that sustained her was her hatred for the thing that had got her here, and she wanted to see the creatures suffer. Although Ever was new to the multiverse, he wasn't new to survival. He could tell when someone was lost. He shrugged, enjoying the ride when he realized Triton was. When the Zeppelins fell on Delong, Certain was rallying the villages together in a way that had never been done. Using their primitive technology, he broadcast an image of himself into the sky to be seen in the surrounding area, speaking in a language they understood. To the tusk-faced Skilakans, he delivered a message of diplomatic power. To the thin, furry Karlivans, he delivered a logical treatise of guile and subterfuge. In every case, he told them, you didn't understand them, so you elevated mere creatures like yourselves, treating them like gods. Now you'll see that they can bleed, just like you. Sarah Kay couldn't understand why Certain had defected. He'd been one of their best. Now because he killed other agents, she had to take him down against her will. Admit it. We're lost, Ever says finally. We're going around and around the same mountain. Triton smiles. We have, and we haven't. Every time we've looped it, it was different than before, until, finally, he points to a gap in the rocks that wasn't there previously. After a seeming eternity, Connie gets to her feet, her atrophied muscles aching. She stumbles around her minuscule cell, almost falling. She hadn't quite gotten used to her bionic enhancements yet, and she sometimes thought the pain was going to kill her, but it hadn't. Thoughts of revenge was the only thing continuing to push her forward. Light cuts into the darkness, making her flinch. Large Neath guards appear grunting and gesturing at her. She doesn't speak their language, but she gets the gist, limping out of the hole where they kept her. It was almost like entering a brand new reality. Everything was so large and she wanted to see it all. Colors had never seemed so bright. They squeezed through the gap. Ever could hear the sound of explosions on the other side. He could tell from the smell that they were going to come out on the same planet, but somewhere else entirely. You don't have to follow me, Triton says. Empress Pro 2 strokes Cetacerine's ears, holding tightly to his leash and looking into his dull eyes. Your essence is too precious for me to let go, she says to him. He has Delong under his control, Sarah Kay says to Juan Sarah, pulling up the holographic feeds in his VR chamber to show the mayhem and carnage. He has uncovered and slaughtered every single one of the agents that we sent after him. Good agents, all of them, some of our best. They're going to have a hard time replacing them. I'm frankly out of ideas, sir. His ability to rally absolute strangers behind his cause is phenomenal. He had all of us fooled, didn't he? Her mentor says. Passed every loyalty test. We need to do something drastic like he would do. What about the Ferb tech? It was furry ghosts who welcomed Ever and Triton into Sly. Show us your wares, they whisper, and we'll let you live. Ever pulls the small eyepiece from his bag. 5A_K0N was second only to the Emperor, and most times she didn't mind what she had to do. Spread the network, look for apparent thoughts, and maintain. But sometimes, when her wiring short-circuited and she became aware, she regretted everything. They may have kept him drugged day and night, but they didn't know Griffin was completely awake. Better than awake. Really, his consciousness was floating, detached from his body like it did when he was on his homeworld of Lysander. He walked between the planes, and seeing his opportunity, he took it, leaping into the otter. Certain sits on a primitive throne, watching his subjects sort the technology they brought, and he knows it isn't enough. Until all the world's bowed, it never could be. 11. Griffin knew he wasn't supposed to be remote viewing like this, but it was a reflexive action born from his life before he was an agent. The Bureau didn't want him to do it because it messed with their multiversal tracking chips, but at this point he didn't care. He listens to the conversations of the otter and Dr. Ryan as the transverser leaps from the planet to planet, headed for Yetzeral. No one was sent to find me, Sebastian grumbles. I had to fight tooth and claw to get accepted. I was told no free rides. Given that his body is already in restraints at Central, he knew that if he was caught keeping tabs on a top-secret mission, he would be erased for sure, but he couldn't help himself. He knew that what the otter was saying was a lie, and he brought to mind all the advantages he'd been given on the way up. He made doubt rise to the top of the young otter's mind so as to push his brass confidence back down to a reasonable level. It was then that they arrived on the Hell World, the transverser stopping with a thump, but Griffin didn't let up the pressure. This mission is what the Bureau considered to be the litmus test, where they threw a young agent into a situation that was far beyond their experience and let them show their true colors. Even though it wasn't his life on the line, and he would grow stronger if the otter died, he couldn't just leave him hanging. Regardless, it's our mission to bring her back, Kaplan says, getting his gear together. Whether or not she deserves it is above my pay grade. I know we were sent out with a job to do, and I want to get it done so we can get back home in one piece. Back at Central, many universes from where he was, Griffin could hear Sarah Kay talking. I know what you're doing, Griff, she says. You're scrambling the multiversal chip readings like crazy. But I'm fond of that otter, okay? Get him back safe. 12. The last thing Sakan wanted to be was a test subject for an insane alien. Although she was new, as she met the people of New Trenton, she knew their god didn't belong. All the Sparrow's servants cowered before her in fear, tripping over their own feet because of the flaws she's intentionally programmed into their artificial anatomy. Yet, like Gertie, they felt powerless against her, with nowhere to run and no escape. This wasn't the first life-threatening situation that she'd been in. As a youngling, she'd grown up under the oppressive Menasker, and it made her into the tough prime leader her soldiers looked up to. She'd faced beatings and torture at their hands, letting them think that they had won, but all the while she was thinking up ways around them, through them. To her, this Griffin was no different. She merely required a new strategy. The nanobots crawling under Sakan's skin connected her to Sparrow on a quantum level, and they circled each other in a non-linear space, two apex predators. I'm giving you an opportunity to leave this place, Sakan says without words. Arrogant mirth ripples from Sparrow. You think you're in a position to do that? I do, the Illic says, blurring without moving to unseat the Griffin from space-time. The Force knocks them through innumerable universes, leaving behind a trail of destruction that the natives would explain as an act of their gods for centuries. The two crash on Furbia, where Sparrow was projecting from, claws at each other's throats. With a slash that would have killed a lesser creature, Sparrow gets Sakan on the neck, knocking her back. I didn't want this, Sakan says, disemboweling her. The Illic sees she's no longer beneath the membrane on Trenton Branswink, but she has no idea where in the multiverse she's arrived. Without Griffon, she has no way of knowing, and worse, no way to find her way back. Not that she was concerned about surviving, their species was capable of withstanding extreme temperatures, hunger, and cold, but she had a mission. Regardless of the opposition, she had to complete it. Sebastian stumbles, climbing out of the transverser, and catches himself, hoping the alien would let it slide. They were miles outside the prison city and had a long way to go before they got there. He didn't want to catch grief about it the whole way. Inside the city, Connie sleeps among a gang of hairless, bear-like men and women. And yet Syrah, it's war every day as the separate factions fight for territory and resources. 13. Not that Sakan would ever admit to it, but she felt like an absolute failure. All she was trying to do was keep her uncle from wreaking havoc, and here she was, stranded. Tetasserini kept his mind quiet so the Empress wouldn't punish him for his thoughts. In that quiet place, he found he could travel without thinking. He could see every world. Even though his mind and body were under strict control, his spirit was free. He reached out timidly at first, sure that Pro 2 would sense it, but she didn't, or was pretending like she didn't. It seemed to be on a level beyond her senses. He knew Sequi was out there somewhere and he wanted to find her. If he could only reach her, if he could only make contact, he knew that she would be able to save him. When he stumbled upon Sakan, he almost erupted with joy, and he had to check himself so as not to be detected. It was her. Sort of. It was a body, a world, a history that she was riding around in. It had its own purpose and place in the multiverse. Mortal like himself, yet there she was. He could sense Sequi in her. His third eye looking over his shoulder, he watched the Empress' mind watching his, but he still reached out to the other in the hopes that his teeny whisper from far away would be enough to draw her in. He was sure Pruto's indifference was a ruse to punish him, but he didn't care. Sakan heard him. A voice so small she almost missed it, but the pain of others was an emotion that she was all too familiar with. It called to her, and she answered.
End of Chapter 4. Thank you for listening to this audio presentation of She Came From Nowhere, a series novelization written and performed by Caleb Morazi. If you'd like to read more of this book, read chapters from the series, listen to audio, and further support the development of this project, please go to patreon.com/SheCameFromNowhere, link in the description. Please like, share, and subscribe this video. Until next time, we'll see you soon.